Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're doing well and ready to get into the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists a little bit. So basically, your arms, but particularly we're focusing on those joints. You are going to need two things that you can put in your hands today. I'm going to use my blocks. If you have blocks, then perfect. That'll work. If you don't have that, then maybe two balls or um, oranges. You don't really want anything breakable, so I wouldn't recommend a teacup, but you're welcome to use that if you prefer. So just two things. And if you don't, you want to just get into the class, then don't worry about it. You don't have to have anything for your arms. Okay, let's start laying down. So cryptic. I'm not telling you anything, not giving anything away. All right. Once you're down on your back, depending on how your day has been up to this point, you might need some time to get some wiggles out or a little yawning stretch. Sometimes it just takes our bodies a little bit longer to settle onto the earth or onto our backs. And then once you've found a position, it feels like, you know, you'll be okay in for a couple minutes. And for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. Exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. And then continue breathing however you need to. It could be in and out through your nose or your mouth. And before we start to focus on the breath, which, is a very lovely way to settle the mind and to settle the body, I want you to take a moment to really thank yourself for coming to your practice today and for joining me for the last 2 years, or maybe even the last couple of weeks or couple months. But it takes a lot sometimes to give ourselves the time to slow down with everything that has been going on in the world and in our lives. It makes it that much more important to take these moments. You can even say in your mind, thank you, so and so, for coming, for doing this, for giving yourself this time. And then let that go. And focus on your breath. And if you notice your mind starting to wander, and it will, and then just gently acknowledge whatever thought you might be having, but then draw your focus back to your breath. Last couple of moments here. And then when you're ready, start to bring a little bit of movement back into your body, whatever way feels best for you to wake up. It could be a big, yawning, full body morning stretch, or it might be really small, subtle movements. And just do what you need to do. And then when you're ready, start to draw your knees in toward your chest and take a little rock from side to side. You could draw circles here with your legs and the hip sockets, or just any kind of movement that feels good. Maybe stretch the legs up to the sky. I'm going to leave this sort of warm up to you. Just move how you need to move for a couple more breaths. All right. And then roll all the way over to one side. It can be super useful if you have a block or a pillow to bring it underneath your head. But if you don't, then it's okay. You could cradle your head on your arm. And then if you're not using your arm underneath your head, then bring both hands or arms in front of you, palms touching each other. That doesn't really matter what side you're on because we're going to do both sides. I think you can bend your knees for a little bit more stability. And then I want you to imagine the face of a clock. Wherever your hands are, depending on what side you're on, you might be facing sort of 3 o'clock with the 12 being at your head, or you might be facing 9 o'clock. But I want you to start to take your top arm or hand and trace as much as you can the fingertips or the palm on the floor, maintaining as much contact as you can as you start to trace the clock face up to 12 o'clock. And then you're going to start to open up. Keep tracing that circle. Right, your arm might have to lift away from the floor. That's okay. You might have a bookshelf behind you, like I do. And then keep tracing down till the hand or the arm sweeps across your hips, and then back in front of you again. So a few more of these. Again, maintaining contact with the floor as much as you can with your hand. Now, don't feel like you need to press it down. You don't need to force it. But we're just starting to open through the chest, through the shoulders. It might feel good to take that little pause in the full open twist. And then one more here. Unless you're moving slowly, and then don't worry about it. All right. And then switch sides. So you could just roll over. I'm going to flip so that I'm still facing you. And then either cradle your head on your bottom arm or reach your arms forward, palm to palm. And then same thing, but it's going to be the opposite direction from the first time. So still going up towards 12 o'clock to start with. And then open to the back. And then across the hips. And then back to where you started. So you get a few of these on this side. And one side might feel much more open than the other, in which case, congratulations, you're human. It's super normal. On one side, it might feel like, oh, I can't maintain contact with the floor at all. And on the other side, maybe you maintain contact the whole time. But it's not about judging ourselves, right? We just thanked ourselves for coming to this practice. So, just observe. Last round here for me anyway. Finish up whatever one you're doing. And then start to use your hands to press yourself up to hands and knees. As always, you can bring extra padding underneath your knees if you would like it or need it. It sort of depends on the surface underneath your mat and how thick your mat is. And let's start to move through cat and cow. So inhale, lift the tailbone, hollow through the lower backs, broaden through your collarbones. Exhale, tuck the tailbone under, round through the spine. Really press the floor away from you. A couple more of these. Inhale into cow. Exhale, round into cat. Maybe there's some other movement here that would feel good, in which case, feel free to add on. Keep moving and grooving here. And And then slowly, when you're ready, come back to center. You can give your hands or your wrists a little shake out if you want. And then it might feel comfortable for you to just be sitting on your shins like this, or maybe you tuck your toes and do a little toe stand, or maybe it's more comfortable to come up to a full kneeling position. So go wherever feels best for you. And then I want you to reach your arms in front of you and flex your fingers back toward your forearms. So it's like you're pressing your hands into the floor, except we're in space. And then keeping your elbows straight, start to press your arms away from you and then draw them back. So imagine it's really the shoulder blades that are controlling this movement, right? Protraction, retraction. And because we're not bearing weight on our hands, it's a bit easier to maintain the position of the elbows straight. Now, well, you're welcome to stay here doing this movement, these scapular push-ups here. Maybe you come forward onto hands and knees and keep practicing that movement. Again, elbows stay straight, but not locked out the whole time. Maybe you come into plank from the knees as we do these scapular push-ups. Or maybe you come up to your toes. Last 3, 2, 1, and come on back down. Shake it out. And then take your knees wide, toes together, shift your hips back, and start to melt forward into child's pose. This is a really great place to bring a pillow underneath your bum and your heels, or maybe underneath your torso. You could stack your forehead on your hands or fists. Just give yourself a little bit of rest here and stay where you are. All right. And then slowly come back up to hands and knees. If you caught me leaving the mat for just a moment, I'm always paranoid that I've forgotten to press record on the video because it has happened. And so I just had to do a little check. But guess what? We're recording, so it's all good. All right. You might stay on hands and knees. You could step one leg out back behind you and then the other, releasing into the calf muscles. Or maybe you join me. Fingers spread wide, hands spread wide. Tuck the toes. Lift your hips up to downward facing dog. You could pedal your heels toward the floor. You might hug your upper arm bones toward each other just to give yourself a little bit more stability. And then send your weight, more into the fingers and out of the heels of the hands. Wherever you are, bend your knees, look forward. Take as many steps as you need to come to the top edge of your mat into your standing forward fold. You could hang out here. You could bring blocks underneath your hands to lift the floor up to you. Or maybe you rest your elbows on your knees or thighs. Maybe you clasp opposite elbows with hands. You could be still. You could sway. And go where you need to go. And then release your hands. Bring your fingertips to your shins or blocks or the earth. And inhale, little partway lift. Back of the neck stays long. Belly bends to spine. Exhale, let it all go. Couple more. Inhale to lift. Back of the legs, little micro bend. Exhale, fold. And then bend your knees. Tuck your chin to your chest. Slowly start to roll up to standing. Head heavy, arms heavy the entire time. Till eventually you come all the way up. Take a couple of loops of your shoulders up, back, and down. A little wiggle, noodle, or shake out. In fact, let's take a little sway from side to side. Just let your arms kind of fly out with the momentum of the twist here. And then pause back in center. Bring your hands to your hips, bend your knees. Take a few hip circles one direction and then the other. All right. And then feet hip width apart. Hug your legs toward each other. gentle squeeze of the bum. So you're not tucking under, right? You're not trying to create diamonds in your butt. Just, you know, feeling the support from the glutes. And belly button to spine, shoulder blades on your back. Inhale, sweep your arms up to the sky, flip your palms skyward. Grab hold of your right wrist, lift tall through your body, and then as you exhale, pull over to the left, send your hips to the right. This might be where you stay. I like to shift my weight over a little bit more into the right foot, so away from the direction of my hands, right? That inside leg might de-weight, or you could cross it in front or behind the supporting leg to really anchor into the stretch, right? Go where you need to go. And then inhale, come back to center, release the grip, get the blood flow back to your arms, and then we'll switch sides. So inhale up. This time grab hold of the left wrist, lift nice and tall, and then exhale over to the right, send the hips to the left. Again, maybe you send your weight over into that left foot. Maybe the right leg de-weights or crosses in front or behind the supporting leg to really anchor into the stretch. Keep breathing. All right. And then inhale, come back up, shake it out, release it all out. Alrighty. Grab your prop, whether it's a block or a ball or whatever it is that you're using. And I want you to bring it into your hand or right palm. So palm facing up. So the very basic movement here is just going to be the sort of rotator cuff, internal, external, rotation, abduction, transduction, this movement. You might choose to add on here and start to scoop the block underneath your armpit. Maybe that's enough, right? I always want you to move within a pain-free range of motion here. Maybe you start to take it back behind you and then out to the side, and then maybe all the way up overhead and then back down. So if you're joining me in sort of the fuller range of motion, you are really getting a full range of motion through the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, right? And blocks might fall. That's okay, or your props. So hopefully, again, you've picked something that's not breakable. And then maybe try going the opposite direction, which can feel a little bit awkward. Right? You could always grip your block with your fingertips if it makes it a little bit easier. And you can see that I'm adding movement into my body to sort of compensate for tight spaces. That's fine. Do what you need to do. Last couple of breaths here. I find the first direction a lot easier than the second one. All right. And then I want you to pause in the center, eyes closed. Just feel what you feel. Notice whatever you notice from one side to the other. Okay, flick your eyelids open and then bring your block or whatever it is that you're using into your left hand. And let's ease into it the same way we did on the right. Right, so just a couple little bit of these rotator cuff exercises, keeping the elbow tucked in if you wish. Or maybe you start to scoop and you think, okay, this is where I need to stay. Or, maybe you start to play with this, it's like a figure eight movement that you're making. And imagine that you had a candle in the palm of your hand. Whew. You don't want to burn yourself, right? Or a cup of tea, you don't want it to spill. Maybe you go the opposite direction. This shoulder is much tighter on me than on the first side, right? So I'm going to congratulate myself for being human. Last couple breaths. That being said, the reverse direction on this side doesn't feel as bad as it does on the other side. So tight in some places, looser in others. Last couple breaths. You can really maybe start to feel your shoulder joint especially warming up a little bit here. The elbow and the wrist are a little bit more secondary. All right, and then again, pause back in center, couple breaths just to feel what you feel. Notice what you notice. Maybe you're laughing at yourself and the blocks are flying everywhere, and that's cool too. Okay, so I did tell you to get two things, so grab your other prop. All right, one in each hand. Here we go. Let's start to try both at the same time. Again, basic or through the sort of bigger range of motion, right? The basic movement is very, very good for you, particularly if you have injuries, right? So I don't want you moving through pain. Maybe go the opposite directions. Oh, I've got to grip my blocks here so they don't fall. Particularly these cork ones are heavy and I don't want to knock over any plants or artwork. And then maybe you play with one direction on one side, one direction on the other, and it's going to look like I'm showing off. But honestly, for me, this is a little bit easier because it gives me more range of motion through my shoulders. And then the opposite way. It's a bit of a brain teaser. Couple more breaths, just wherever you need to be. All right, and then take your props off to the side. Couple moments again in the center just to shake it off, right? Feel what you feel. And then flick your eyelids open, interlace your fingers, press your palms away from you, round through your spine. Right, tuck the tailbone under, bend through the knees. You might shift a little bit side to side here. And then inhale, come on up, shake it out. All right, take your feet a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, toes turned out. Your toes can be off the edge of your mat even. And on your inhale, sit down into your squat or malasana. As always, this might not be where you want to be, in which take your feet wider, rest your elbows on your knees or thighs. If you're down in full malasana, make sure you're not just hanging out here at the bottom of the squat, right? Feel that little buoyancy, little hug of the legs toward each other, so if you had to stand up, you could. Press your elbows into your knees. Can you de-weight your big toes if your feet are flat, so you're not rolling into the arches of your feet? All right, and then maybe you bring your hands behind you and sit down, or come down to hands and knees first, but make it onto your bum. Take a little windshield wiper of your legs, and then swing your legs in front of you, and then plant your feet. Bring your hands behind you, fingertips point back to start with, and then press into the hands and feet a little bit, just so you can shift your hips forward, but then bring your bum back to the floor. From here, wrap your elbows, your shoulder blades toward each other, lift your heart up to the sky. So hopefully you're getting a nice release through the chest, through the fronts of the shoulders, maybe even down your upper arms, especially if you've been pumping the biceps curls at the gym. I see you lifting weights at the gym, at home, in the solitude of your closet, wherever. Last couple breaths here. All right, and then gently bend your elbows, shake out your arms, and then we'll make our way down onto the mat. So you could tuck the tailbone and do a sort of Pilates style roll down to come down to the mat. You can always grab the backs of the thighs for support, or use your arms, or just flop on back. But eventually come all the way down, hug your knees into your chest, take a little rock from side to side. All right, and let's set up for a twist. Take your right arm out to the side. You might shift your hips right a little bit to start with, and then as you exhale, lower your knees to the left. You can take any variation of twist here that feels good, whether the knees are stacked, single leg twist, or cross leg. This is a great place to bring a pillow or a block underneath your knees or between your thighs for a little bit more support. Try to let your feet rest on the floor though, if they can, so they're not just hovering. And you might look along the right arm or in the opposite direction of your knees. And last breath here. And then inhale, return to center. Reset your pelvis and your spine. And then maybe shift your hips left. Take your left arm out to the side. Exhale, lower your knees to the right. Again, as gentle or as deep of a twist as you need. And even with twists, doesn't have to be the same variation from one side to the other. Go where you need to go. And I'd like you to think about that shoulder exercise that we just did. I hope you had fun. I hope it wasn't too frustrating. I had one lady once say that she felt jealous when we were doing it. I was like, don't feel jealous. Right? Don't get jealous. Get even with the exercise. Right? Try it at home. Play with it. It could be your new party trick. Maybe we're having parties again. I don't know. Things are changing in the world. Last couple breaths here. On your inhale, return to center. Reset your pelvis and your spine. And then draw your knees toward you. Take them wide out toward your shoulders or armpits. And this is a great place to stay for your happy baby, particularly if you're getting a lot of sensation through the groin, the adductors. Or you might deepen it if you wish. You could kick the feet up to the sky and grab the backs of the thighs or somewhere along your legs, your ankles, or your feet. Right? You're essentially in a deep squat here. You're just on your back instead of on your feet. So that feels pretty good. You could rock side to side. You could extend one leg or the other. And if there's anything else you feel like you need before your rest, please feel free to take it. Otherwise, start to make your way into your final resting pose. You could be flat on your back, legs bent or straight in Shavasana. You could rest on your side or in child's pose or in a seated meditation. And as always, there's no rush to get there. But once you have found your pose of rest for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose. Exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. And then let go of your breath control. Return to your natural breath. Let go of any last muscle gripping or tension, particularly in your face or your jaw. With each exhale, let your body melt a little bit deeper into the earth. And take a moment again to thank yourself for coming to your practice today, for maybe trying something new and feeling goofy. And then let that thought go as well. And any other thoughts that might pop into your brain, acknowledge them without judgment, but let them go. Stay here longer if you can, 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.